This is Sifano on the word Elokim. Bereshis for Elokim, the appellation of Elokim. So the Sifano says, Hine milas Elokah. Whenever we find the word Elokah, Torah al Nitzchi, the word Elokah represents eternity. The being is eternal. Ulezeh al Hashedim Shein Meisim Kibnei Odom. Moshe was Razal. Mara tells us that demons, although they're ethereal beings that visually we can't see them, and they have certain powers and they know certain things, but they're born and they die. There's a male, there's a female demon. And they're born and they die. Ochli v'shosin, the Gemara tells us Chagiga. They eat and they drink, they procreate, and they die. So a shade is a finite being, like a human being is a finite being. Omar l'shedim loy elo ka. We read in the Torah that a demon is lo elokah. What does it mean? The demon is a finite being. He's not elokah. He's not an eternal being. Al kel yisborach elokah. But yet to Hashem, we refer to him as elokah. Kihu hanitzchi behechlit. When we speak of eternal, he's the absolute eternal being in the absolute sense. You know, usually we say everything is relative. I always say, a person is totally objective. That term, totally objective, means in regard to others, relative to others, he's totally objective. But in the absolute sense of objectivity, totally objective, no such thing as, and anybody's totally objective, only HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Why? Because every human being is made up of every experience he ever experienced in life. His environment, his friends, his subject matter, what he understands. So that's all subject to the way he processes it. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not subject to any influence. So he's objective on the absolute level. HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When we see HaKadosh Baruch Hu is eternal, absolutely eternal. There's no beginning, there's no end. Right? One of the Yud Gimel Ikrei Emunah fundamentals of Jewish belief is he's not subject to anything that a body is subject. What's a body? A body doesn't mean only something physical. An angel also has a form. Right? We say Ein lo temusa, ein lo. He has no form. Meaning, if there's no beginning, there's no end, that means he's eternal on the absolute level. V'yom olov Elokim Blosher Rabin. Now he speaks about something very interesting. Elokah is singular. Means Elokah is singular, eternal, the singular absolute being. What's Elokim? We know whenever you add a yud and a mem, it becomes plural. That's Losher Rabim. Lahoro shutzuras kol atzuros haditzchios v'zulosom. Meaning, he is the Almighty. Whatever form there is, whatever exists, that's all included within himself. So he's absolute, eternal, and everything that exists or can exist is himself. That's Elokim. That's the plural of Elokah. As Yeshaya Novi says, the world is filled in its entirety with his glory. This is the concept of Hamokom. Why is the Kodesh Baruch Hu referred to as Mokom? So the Midrash tells us, the world is not God's location, but God is the location for existence, for everything that exists. What is a mokom? What is a location? A location has a capacity to contain. That's what a location is. The table has a certain size. Its capacity is based on its dimension. That's a mokum. The world is not God's place, but God is the mokum of existence. Meaning the only reason why existence exists is because he wills its existence. But if he should cease willing its existence, it doesn't exist. So what is the basis? What is the basis for everything? On the physical level, on the spiritual level, on any level, it's him. So therefore, he's the mokom. So that's what he's saying over here. The only thing that exists is the only thing which emanates from his being, meaning what he wills. The concept of Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. What's Echad? Echad doesn't mean one and only. Echad means there's only one. Anything that exists emanates from him. So everything is an expression of him. That's Echad. And if you should cease willing its existence, nothing exists. And this is what we said, the concept of Machadish Tu B'chol Yom Tov Masev Reishis. God wills continuously existence. Existence exists from moment to moment, not because it exists once he creates it. It only continues to exist because continuously it's an expression of his willing that it should exist. So why is there light? Why are there luminaries? Just as 5,784 years ago, Hashem said, Yi Moros HaShamayim, there should be luminaries in heaven. As he said then, Hashem is still saying that. Yi Moros, it should continue. And it evolves and it manifests itself exactly the way he wills it should be. So the whole concept of Yesh Mi'ayin that we speak about ex nihilo started so many thousands of years ago. That process is still continuing. So he's Eloka, he's Elokim. Elokim is the plural of Eloka. Kamru atom achais kulam. V'altzar hazdamos yikro kol nivdal michoyme Elokim. Anything which is removed from physicality is referred to as Elokim. But that's only, it's a borrowed term. Vikru hashoftim hamubche Elokim. A person who was ordained by Moshe Rabbeinu, judges are referred to as Elohim. Why are they that? Kasher yishpitu b'tselem Elokim. That's only if they judge, if they render decisions in the process is tselem Elokim. What is that? The Gemara tells us in Sanhedrin, quotes a pasuk, that Hashem nitza b'adas kel. God, when a rabbinic court convenes, a bezdin convenes, Hashem convenes with them. Hashem nitza b'adas kel, meaning if the court meets all the criteria which is prescribed by the Torah, what's a qualified dayan? He has to be a musmach from Moshe Rabbeinu. And he has to be proficient. And he has to meet certain criteria. If he meets that, he is Elohim. What is he? Because God is associated. He represents the Tzelem Elokim. In that context, he represents that to its fullest extent. And therefore, he merits the Siyata Dishmaya that when he issues the verdict, which meets all the criteria of the Torah, that verdict is a verdict of truth. We always say, if the Bezdin rules that somebody should be put to death, and they went through the whole process, they interrogated the witnesses, and they took a vote, and the vote was guilty, and they put the man to death. Later, witnesses come, and they proved that the witnesses, which was the evidence to find the person guilty, they lied, they were Eidim Zomim. What's the halacha? So the Torah says, the Eidim Zomim, if the verdict was not only issued, but it was carried out, you don't punish, you don't put the Eidim Zomim to death, because it's Kasher Zomim lo Kasher Osa. It's only when it's still in, they plotted to do it, but now if it actually was actualized. So it comes out, how does the court ever put a man to death? There's always human error. If there's always human error, you took an innocent life. The answer is, it's not an innocent life. Elokim needs a balance scale. God convenes with the Bezdin. So although he may have not been guilty for this particular crime, but why was he put to death? Because Hashem says he has to be put to death. So the witnesses lied and were conspiring. That's only regard to the facts. But in terms of guilt, the verdict guilty, he was guilty. Because if he wasn't guilty, he couldn't have been put to death. Because Elokim nitzav das kel. So the reason why the Bezdin are referred to as Elohim is because they represent, in that context, they are the Tzelem Elokim. Because Hashem convenes with them. And every bit of their processing, the mental, their sense of truth, is only what they sense, only because that's what Hashem wants them to sense. He's directly involved in that process. Therefore, the Dayanim are called Elohim. Now we can understand why, if a Dayan doesn't have the ordination of Moshe Rabbeinu, what's the halacha? It's not a valid bezdin. On a Torah level, it's not a valid bezdin. You have to have that credibility. They have to have that caliber. The question is why? What's the halacha if you have a non-Jew, a woman even, and she's a phenomenal calligrapher, and she writes a Sefer Torah? What's the halacha? It's not valid. Only a male Jew could write a Sefer Torah. But it has, every letter is formed beautifully and perfectly. It meets all the criteria of halacha. But you have to be a Jew. You have to be a male. If you're not a male, an adult, it's not a valid Sefer Torah. What happens if you have a non-Jew does shchita, ritual slaughter, meets every aspect of ritual slaughter? The halacha, it's nevela. The animal is considered as if it was shot. Why? Because the Torah says the only person who qualifies to do shchita, which it doesn't result in nevela, like a carcass, is only if a Jew does the shchita. And what happens if the Jew doesn't keep dietary laws? And he's the shochet. The Torah says he doesn't meet the grade. His shchita is nevela. If he does the shchita, although he meets every aspect of what shchita is, but since he's not qualified to do shchita, the animal is nevela. So it's only Elokim. When is the verdict truth? If you're Elokim. If you're Elohim, then you don't have to be concerned that you're actually putting an innocent man to death. Because even if he turns out to be innocent for this particular crime, the reason why he's put to death is because Hashem wanted him to die. The Gemara tells us in 2 locations that although today we no longer have Arba Mises Bezdin, the court, we have no Sanhedrin, so a person cannot be put to death in the 4 areas of death penalty. Skila, Sreifa, Heri, V'chenek, those are the 4 levels of death penalty. But Din Arba Mises Bezdin, but the actual effect of Arba Mises is still in effect. For instance, a person, what is Chenek? Chenek is strangulation. So the court rules he has to be died through strangulation. He was strangled. What happened today? We have no Bezdin, but he's liable for strangulation. What does he do? He drowns. Drowning is asphyxiation. That's chenek. A person would deserve to be put death through skila. We have no skila. What was skila? The Gemara tells us in Sanhedrin, the Mishnah, they would have an elevated location, and they would stand the person on that location, which was the equivalent of his height. They would tie his feet together and his hands behind his back, and they push him off backwards, and he would fall and break his neck. So what's skila? A person falls off a roof or falls off an elevated location, he falls to his death. That's skila. And it goes and shows exactly how these events correspond to what Mrs. Bezdin is. So therefore, but why? Why did he fall to his death? Oh, it was an accident. There are no accidents. The reason why he fell to his death and he didn't have the cognizance of the shmirah, because Hashem wanted him to fall to his death. So therefore, the Bezdin, when they rule, they're Elohim, because they represent the Etzel and Elokim in that particular moment. You know, the Gemara tells us, I mentioned this more in the past, the Gemara says, Ein Odom Nokif Etzbo Milamato, Elokim Achris Olav Milamalo. When you stub your toe or your finger on the terrestrial level, at that moment, the reason why you stubbed your finger and you experience that level of pain or whatever injury is because at that moment they pronounced in Shemayim that that's what's meant to happen. There's no coincidences. Well, I was careless. I should be more careful. The reason why you weren't more careful and you're careless, and many people are careless, but they don't break their toe or stub their toe or incur that level of injury because it was pronounced in Shemayim in heaven, that's what it should be. There are no coincidences. That's what it is. So if the court rules that he has to be put to death, it's because that's Hashem's verdict that he has put to death, even though the Eidim are found to be Eidim Zominim, they were conspiring, that has nothing to do with the verdict, but the verdict, nevertheless, is a correct and absolute, truthful verdict. The most difficult of the Asar Nisyon, Shnis HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Avram was the Akedah. Now, why do we go to Tashlich? Because Avram Avinu, when he was going to the Akedah, Tashlich on Rosh Hashanah, he was confronted with a raging river. Because Satan understood that if he succeeds in this test, whenever he will prosecute following, so that schus will silence his prosecution. So in every way he tried to prevent him from going and to waylay him. He comes as a raging river. Avram, as it is, it's not so simple. Here, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, this child that will be born to you in your old age will be the future of creation. He'll be like the stars of the heaven. All of a sudden, he says, Halei La'olam, bring him up as a burnt offering, as a korban. Avram, Vayashkim Avram Baboker. Not only does he not ask a question, he rises early in the morning, hitches his own donkey, which indicates he's going. All of a sudden, he's confronted with a raging river. To what point? He says to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Bo ma'imad nofesh. I'm drowning. I'm trying to do your will. I can't do your will. If it would be related to any of us, what would we do? Hashem, we did our best. We're going home. Avram Avinu didn't say that he's going home. I'm trying to do your will. Allow me to do your will. He's slaughtering his own son. Son's 37 years old. This was the original promise. Avram Avinu, Bo ma'imad nofesh. I can't do your will. The moment he said that, the river disappears. When he goes, and he succeeded. And even when he wanted to actualize his kavanah, what happens? There's the aisle that was created, Ben Hashmoshes. There were certain things created, 10 things created Ben Hashmoshes. One was the aisle of the Akedah. The aisle is running towards Avram Avinu that he should be used, that Avram should actualize all his intentions. What happens? The Sodom intercepted the aisle, didn't allow him come. And therefore he got caught in the smach, in the thicket. Only then did Avram go take the aisle and brought it the Makom Yitzchak Beno. He brought in the place of Yitzchak, that every aspect of Kavanah that he would have done to Yitzchak, he had that intent when he slaughtered the aisle, the ram itself. That's the challenge. There's no challenge. Everything in life, every experience is a challenge. The Yesod V'Sheshavot writes that whenever you do a mitzvah, at least, and he points this out, you always have to pray that you should not be distracted. Because Satan always wants to somehow minimize, either you shouldn't do the mitzvah or to minimize your ability to do the mitzvah. He gives an example. Before the Yesod V'Sheshavot would say Birch Samozon, which is a Torah obligation, so you're doing a mitzvah, and there's a whole question how you do the mitzvah. You do it bi'avo, you do it bi'yiro, do you do it focused, do you do it, are you distracted? So he would say a tefillah before he would say the Birch Samozon, that he should say, be able to fulfill the mitzvah in its complete way, not to be distracted, to do ba'ava, to do bi'yiro. That was the tefillah you had before you do the mitzvah. You understand? Because it's not uncommon. I'll give you an example. Comes Motzoi Shabbos, you make an Havdalah. What happens? As soon as you start Havdalah, what happens? The phone rings. First thing. So what do? You have to somehow preempt the Sultan. You make sure the ring is shut off. You make sure whatever it is, you don't want distractions. Everything should be in place. The matches are on the table. The wine's on the table. Not all of a sudden, in the middle, all of a sudden, you forgot the Besam on the table. You forgot to open up the Besamim to be able to smell it. You try to address everything in advance, but what does it happen? The answer is because any level of distraction minimizes the quality and the value of the mitzvah. These are challenges. That's what it is. Nothing is random. I forgot. You don't forget. I mean, it's very often it's choice. Some people, they're not thoughtful. People are not considerate. They're not considerate because that's the way they chose to bathe. They're inconsiderate. But a person's considerate at times, you overlook things. If I would have known, I wouldn't have done that. But why? The snake, this is the ancient snake, was the most cunning of all the undomesticated creatures of the field. Asher osa Hashem Elokim, which again, Hashem Elokim, not Elokim, made Hashem Elokim. Here, Hashem Elokim, that's Midas Rachmim. The Nachash was made within the context of Rachmim. Now, we find that after Hashem completed creation early, it says, Vayar Elokim, Chol Sherosa is Tov Ma'od. Was Tov Ma'od. What was Tov Ma'od? After creation was completed, he saw everything he had done was Tov Ma'od. So this question, what is the meaning of Ma'od? The word Ma'od are the same letters as Odom. It's Tov Ma'od. Let's say Adam wouldn't have been created. What would have been the value of creation? Had no value. Creation is the setting for every challenge that the human being has to deal with. And if he succeeds, then creation met its purpose. So Kol Asher Osa Hashem Elokim was Tov Ma'od. What's Ma'od? Odom. Odom Arisha. But the Medrash says, there's a Medrash, what's Tov Ma'od? Tov Ma'od is the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination. That's Tov Ma'od. Why? If a person, the Ramchal explains, he doesn't bring this Chazal, that if a person would not have challenges, and a person would naturally do good, do you attribute that action to the person himself? The action is not attributed. If I go, an external force forces you to violate the Torah, whether it's Chibur Shabbos, eating non-kosher, I force you. Does the person who's actually involved in that transgression, has any level of liability? He has no liability. That's onus rachmana patre. That since there's an external force which is causing him to violate, the action is not attributed to himself. So if a person will naturally do good, and he has no choice but to do good, so there's something compelling him to do good, the action is not attributed to himself. Therefore, he gets no credit for it. So what does HaKadosh Baruch Hu do? As the Rambam says in Hilchos Tshuva, he puts you in the equidistant point between the negative and the positive, and now it's up to you to take initiative to do either good or, God forbid, to do evil, to do the wrong thing. So now, why do you do the good? Because you took the initiative to do good. And if the person chose to do the wrong thing, it was his initiative to do the wrong thing. So that's not due to an external force, but that's due to your own decision that you brought that about. That's the Rambam in Hilchos Tshuva. So the reason why, why is a person deserving of any level of credit at the end of a person's lifetime? It's because it's your initiative. Now, why should a person not do good naturally? The answer is because there's the Yetzer Hara. Because the Yetzer Hara is the challenge. You know, the Chafetz Chaim writes, the Gemara tells us that the Yetzer Hara is compared to a zvuv. A zvuv is a fly. A zvuv, she says, why? She says, a fly is buzzing around the head, and you swat it away. What does it do? It goes to the other side of you. So until you kill it, it doesn't go away. Or you have to leave the location. It doesn't go away. The Yetzer Hara is involved in our lives 24/7, every moment of our lives till we're no longer alive. He's like the zvuv. And you always have to contend with him. The challenge is ongoing without a stop. And therefore, Chazal tell us, Hilch says, Al Tam Ba'atzmat Yom Mosto. Even the Avos HaKadoshim, Hashem would not allow his name Elokei to be associated with Avram Avinu until he passed away. Until Yaakov passed away. Yitzchak only because he was blind and he was confined to the house. So he was like mess. He was like no longer a living person. Therefore, he wasn't subject to the Yetzer Hara. Therefore, Hashem already associated his name with Yitzchak even in his lifetime. But anyone else, you never know. Every moment you're in a position of being challenged. That's Tov Ma'od. And because of that, every moment of your existence has this infinite value. You merit eternity because every moment is attributed to yourself because it's your own initiative which makes the difference in what direction you go. So therefore, the Tov mode, it says the Nochosh was the most cunning creature, undermost creature in the field. Asher osa Hashem Elokim. What's Hashem Elokim? Elokim is Bidis Adin. Hashem Elokim, this is Rachman. You hear this? The ancient snake, which brought about disaster on the world, that was Hashem Elokim. That was Bidis Rachman. Could you understand that? How's it Bidis Rachman? The answer is because that was the ultimate challenge. If Adam would have been able to withstand that challenge, the world would have reached its level of perfection. Unfortunately, because he chose to do the wrong thing, he took the world down. There's a medrash on this week's parsha when Hashem brought him into the Gan Eden. Hashem says, "I created nearly a perfect world. It's up to you either to advance it or you could destroy it. Do me a favor, please. Don't destroy my world." Now, the reason why there's any level of suffering from the moment Adam ate of the Eitz Hadas till today, any level of Chil Hashem, anything which transpired afterwards in the negative, it's because of eating of that fruit. But that's Hashem Elokim, because the challenge, the greater the challenge, the greater the result of it, if you succeed. I mentioned the other day, the Ramak writes in the Talmud Dvorah that Hashem is referred to as Melech Oluv, the disgraced king. Why the disgraced king? And I mentioned the other day because the only way a person is able to sin is how? You can't sin unless you have a body. Now, why do you have the ability to chas v'shalom violate Shabbos? Because you choose to violate Shabbos. But if Hashem would not will that you have the ability to strike the match, or to lift the light switch, or to put, or make the fire, or put the kettle on the fire to cook the water, you could do it. So to give you Bechira, Hashem is actually involved in the process of disgracing himself. Person does a Chil Hashem. Why is he able to perpetrate Chil Hashem? Because Hashem allows him, gives him the ability. Every moment the Chil Hashem that is able to articulate words that are Chil Hashem, even to Chas v'Sholom, to Mevorach Hashem, to blaspheme Hashem, because God gives you that ability to articulate those words. Why? Because to give the person the ability to have Bechira, the more negative you could go, the greater value is on the positive side. You know where he could have gone? He could have been that, and he chose to be the tzaddik. So if the parameters are very narrow, what could have he done? What could have he done? You know, the Gemara tells us in Sanhedrin, we just had it in Kedushin, when a mouse steals cheese, who's the thief? Is the mouse the thief? Or is the hole to which the mouse could escape to, is that the thief? The Gemara says, Lo achbar ganva elo chura ganva. The achbar is the mouse, is not the thief, the chor. Because that's a chor it can escape to, because if it didn't have a location to escape, it would steal the cheese. So the reason why our positive choice has such great value is because you could have gone to the negative. You could have been who knows what. And he chose not to go in that direction. Therefore, so Hashem, by widening the parameters to where you could have gone, that's always for man's best interest to give him greater value when he makes the right decision. So he's willing to be Melech Olu for the sake of the person that ultimately should be the ultimate beneficiary in what he does. It's not to be believed. That's Hashem Elokim. The Nochash took the world down. Every Chil Hashem from that moment going till the end of time is due to the Nochash. And that's Hashem Elokim. That's Tov Ma'od, here. V'yar Elokim call Hashem also Tov Ma'od. What's Tov Ma'od? Yitzhara. This is the Nochash HaKadmoni. This is the original ancient snake in the Garden of Eden. Repeat what you just said.
Hashem has given us incredible ability to change the world, change the universe, incredible power that we have as human beings.
Okay. Whether the world rises or falls, that's based on our choices. Right? You read the Torah, if you follow my statutes, then the bounty will be unlimited. But if chas v'sholom you don't, we speak about the Torah. We speak of the court curses. So what the Torah is saying, you determine what your fate will be, what the outcome will be. You walk the right walk, it's the ultimate. God, chas v'shalom, you take the left turn, it's disastrous. That's what Torah says. So the predicament of our existence is determined by who? Is determined by our behavior. But you still have tzaddik v'ralo, you still have tzaddik v'tovlo. It's not contradictory, because that's a personal challenge. Everybody has to have his personal challenges to be able to address what he's meant to perfect. Person who's tzaddik v'ralo, he needs those challenges to perfect his neshama. The person tzaddik v'tovlo, since he has a different mission to perfect his neshama, he has to be given all the positive within existence that despite the being now having a greater challenge of ego, you have to deal with all the honor they give you, and you feel that you have kochi v'otzimodi. Yeah, it's my own power brought this about because you have phenomenal intelligence, you have charisma, and you have many things. You could attribute it to yourself, but that person becomes humble. For him to become humble is not a simple feat. Tremendous. To be humble despite you're gifted. The person who has an ordinary person, for him to be humble is no big deal to be humble. What do you have to be? What do you have to pride yourself? The Gemara tells us in Nida that there are a number of people God, Hashem cannot tolerate. He's sonate. The word sonate, he hates them. Cannot, who are they? Oni balgaivo. Oni balgaivo. Person is a poor man and he's arrogant. Rich man, he has what to be arrogant about because he believes that his successes are due to himself. But the man, you walk with your hat in your hand, and you're begging, and you don't have 2 cents to show for your existence. What are you being pompous and arrogant about? So therefore, it's a real problem. There, Hashem cannot tolerate that. Oni bal gaiva. So the challenge of the rich man is greater. It's tzaddik the tovlo. He has other levels of challenge. How do you use those gifts that Hashem gives you? Do you invest in l'shem shamayim? Somebody once asked Einstein, his genius. He had a choice. If he would have invested in Torah, he was gifted with a very special IQ capacity. He invested it to become one of the greatest physicists, to be behind the atomic bomb with this theory of relativity. Lahavdil, Reb Chaim Brisker, all the Limud Torah in the world from his time onward, the analytical process, how to understand Torah Hashem, that's his approach. Could you imagine? The genius of Reb Chaim Brisker, I once mentioned that the Reb Chaim Brisker had a Talmud, a student who was under his tutelage till he was about 19. Then he left Europe and ultimately became non-observant, and he was Einstein's protege in Princeton. And they asked this person, who had a greater mind, Reb Chaim Brisker or Einstein, Albert Einstein? That's what they asked him. So he said, this is what he said. He said, Reb Chaim Brisker, any question you asked him, anything, instantaneously, he'd give you an understanding without any hesitation. Einstein had to think about it. That's what he said. The genius of Reb Chaim is not to be believed. But he said, Einstein, if you work on it longer and this and that, maybe Einstein would be more correct. But you realize this is this 19-year-old takeaway of Reb Chaim. So even his takeaway and become non-observant, he understands in certain areas, Reb Chaim's head and shoulders above Einstein. So if Einstein would have taken that genius and invested in the Torah, what would have been? Who knows what would have been? But he made a choice. He made a choice to go in another area, to invest in something. So when a person's endowed with special gifts, the question is, what do you put those gifts? Which basket do you put it into? Do you put it in the spiritual basket, or do you put it into the material basket? That's it. So it's a different challenge, but everything in life is a challenge. But that's Hashem Elokim. Only that's Rachmik, because only God knows what your neshama needs to be perfected, what level of challenge you need. Therefore, that is your prescription of life, how to deal with your daily predicaments. We speak about Tsar Gidul Bonim. Raising kids is not easy. Some people have greater difficulty raising children. Other people have less difficulty raising children. But that's the curse. After Chavim of Deitz Adas, there's something else, Tsar Gidul Bonim, the birth process, postpartum blues. All this is part of the Chet of Adam Rishon. That was the curse. By the sweat of brow, you have to eat bread. All this. So all these new challenges, all these levels of distraction only came about as this was a result of the crossing that line we shouldn't have been crossed. But that's attributed to Adam and to Chava. Therefore, we have liability for that action. And the result was, the day you will eat of that fruit, you become subject to death. Most tomos, you will die. Doesn't mean instantaneous death, but you'll be subject to death. Okay? Now, we don't have that much time, so I'm not going to go into Pasuk. Now, we find that Adam, Adam heard Hashem's dictate. All the trees, all the fruits of all the trees are permitted, except one tree, the Eitz Hadas, which is Tov v'Ra. But Chava did not hear that dictate directly from Hashem. Adam shared it with her. So when he said to his wife, not only did Hashem say not to eat of the fruit of the tree, you shouldn't even touch the tree, not even to touch it. So what did the Nachash do? He pushed Chava into the tree, and she touched it. She had no ill effect when she touched the tree. So the Nachash says that just as you will not die if you touch the tree, if you eat of the fruit, you will also not die. You will not be subject to death. And he says, why don't you taste it? Try it. She tastes it, and whatever happens. Now, what was the impetus or the convincing argument why she should eat? You have so much fruit to eat. Why this fruit? So the Nachash said to Chava, how do you think God became a creator? How do you become a creator? God is not ex nihilo. God ate of the tree of this fruit. That's how he attained his creative powers. No artisan wants competition. The reason why God doesn't want you to eat that fruit, because you'll compete with him as a creator. You hear this? And that drew into this challenge, and she ate. You know something? I say to you, you see, there's a new vitamin on the market. You eat this, you can pick up the Brooklyn Bridge and walk away with it on your shoulders. And you understand? There was no more intelligent being than Adam Chava, the handiwork of God. I mean, how could she believe such nonsense, such foolishness? The way God became a creator, and the existence that existed with the Galactus, everything, he ate of this fruit, and that's how we had all the creative powers to create all these various levels of existence. The celestial, the terrestrial, the oceans, the this, and they understood everything. As it says, Adam saw from one end of the world to the other. That was the level of clarity. All this came about because the creator ate of this fruit. You tell me, would you buy it? You know, Alan became a doctor. He wrote up a whole thing. Didn't go to Einstein, nothing. There's this pill. It's called, you become a doctor instantaneously. He took the pill, swallowed it. They got him his white jacket with his name embroidered on it. Dr. Alan Spiegel, NYU. They took him. Would you believe it? But Chava believed it. The most intelligent being, that handiwork of God, she believed it. How's it possible? So the way we explained it in the past was this, like you said earlier, a human being is given powers. We create worlds. Our behavior causes the world to rise and fall. You do the right thing, there's an energy created, which worlds are created. Blessing, bounty comes unlimited. God will pour down blessing ad b'lidai. Actually, even die. Your lips will become worn out. You say enough. But God forbid, if you choose the other way, you destroy the world. You destroy worlds. So, because Chava understood what that reality was, therefore she said, she knew she had creative powers. But creative powers were only as a result of what she does. I mean, that was through cause. My actions have causality. But to bring it to another level, eat of the tree of knowledge. That'll actualize it, to bring it into the physical. Therefore, she was able to be duped and be convinced. If we would understand, by putting that coin in that slot machine, you pull it, $500 million comes out of that machine. You're putting that coin in that machine. No matter what, even if it's your last coin, knowing when you pull that slot, that lever, that kind of wealth is going to come out of that machine. If we would understand the significance of our actions by learning one word of Torah, Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam, and Tzchai B'Ayal Malekum, it's unlimited. We'd be busy doing mitzvahs 24 hours a day. We wouldn't even want to go to sleep. It would be like the Chazon Ish. The Chazon Ish, he was so committed to learning that he would learn to the point that he would actually, didn't even have strength to get to his bed. There were times they would find him, he would collapse next to his bed. He pushed himself to the nth degree. Why? Because he had such an understanding of the value of Torah, serving Hashem through Talmud Torah and Kulam. Every bit of his being, of his ability, every fiber of his existence was fully invested in what? In Torah itself, to elucidate that Torah. So Chabad, only because she understood who she was and what her essence was, it's expanding her creative powers. Therefore, she was convinced and gullible to buy into what the snake presented to her.
Stay safe.